I'm gonna, because he's gonna be stationary anyways. He's not gonna be moving. Okay. Okay. That works. Perfect. Hello. You're good. You're good. You're good. It's a delay. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You watching any football this weekend? Alabama. Oh, okay. Yeah, Brady. Uh, okay. Hopefully. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Charlie's. All right. Hello. Hello. All right. William, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. So we're going to see if this shows up now in the stream. I'm sure it will.
Sure.
Um,
Should.
all right. Okay, so I'm going to keep on talking and see if it ever comes up.
Okay. Alrighty. Endoscopy.
Okay, so as long as we have the
Perfect.
microphone here, it's
It's
working just fine. Hey,
perfect. Perfect. I,
that's okay. Okay, well, no, we're not getting a delay. The people outside are getting a delay. Don't care about them.
Hold for a minute, sit there, switch over to control plate for me.
And all right, so we ready to let William go? Is he ready to be done? Nope. You have to stay, William.
okay. That's fine.
And you're right in front of the Snapple machine.
Yes, the Snapple machine.
Okay. You're doing fine, but now we don't have any. William, talk to me. Yeah, so we got nothing on William right now.
That's what I'm expecting, but that's okay.
He's got a Snapple machine right there. Now he's not in front of the Snapple machine.
Now I can't hear him, but oh yeah, I'm waiting to see. Is that in broadcast? What you're seeing right now is from here. Okay, yeah, I want that in broadcast. The control plate in broadcast.
Why are you trying to do that? What's the
Because
point?
I'm going to swap off of this, and then I want to be able to come back since we're going to be switching back to here, and then listen to sound.
Okay.
It's now in broadcast. Okay.
All right. So.
Okay, now, good. We got that. Now go ahead and swap back to wall plate. Wall plate, yep. And David, you and William can talk
All right, William. Can you talk to me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? One,
Yep.
two, three.
Yep. We're hearing you
Perfect.
great. Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Video still clear.
Video's still cleared. Sing a song.
Yes, sir.
No. Don't sing a song. No. Don't sing
Rising
a song.
up, back on the street.
Don't sing a song. We don't want a song to be sung.
Oh.
What's really interesting is this camera on the FaceTime is I can't get the entire thing on, like with life size.
I can hear him, but I'm not in broadcast.
The
So I'm pretty much just going to put him up like right there.
Oh my God.
All right. So William, you still there?
yes, sir. I'm still here.
Who's your favorite player in the NFL this year?
Be uh, probably Drew Brees.
Drew Brees?
Probably Drew Brees. He's doing wonderful.
What
Now
about
that he has now that he has Des Bryant, he's going to do even better.
Yeah, Des Bryant's going to be a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a beast there in New Orleans. But what about Mahomes from Kansas City?
He's okay. I like what's the guy from the Browns quarterback?
Oh yeah, he's actually doing really well this year. I think he'll be even doing better without the coach out of the way.
Oh yeah. True.
So I think that's going to be a big thing.
Right.
But I'm worried about Patrick Mahomes. I think he's a one and done. I mean, I think he's.
Oh yeah. It's an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I think.
All right, are we good, guys?
Good. A fun fact: my cousin is Adrian Peterson.
Wow, that was a long delay to get back there. Yeah.
All right, so we're good. All right, William, come on back, man. We're good.
Alrighty.
Thanks, dude.
JPS logo
No
back
problem.
there. Yeah.
Thank you for watching that.
Yeah, I was like getting ready to put it up and I could hear.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today in attendance. It's an exciting day as JPS continues its history in this community, and we're looking forward to getting to that. I'm told there's no one here to speak, so again, we will call this meeting officially at 1:10. And again, thank you all so much for being here. I'd like to ask Chaplain Leanne Franklin to please come forward, and I'm going to say something as she approaches the podium. And she and I had tears in our eyes this morning. I attended a function with Leanne and on the east side of Fort Worth. It's something that JPS has participated in. We're going to talk about the bond and passage of a bond, but JPS just doesn't change because we pass a bond package. I know I've attended that breakfast several years. Ralph, I think in the Brighter Outlook breakfast you've attended, you and I have attended together over at that. Yes, and Leanne was there today, a couple of other staff members, and it was really nice to hear the community. I know Roderick was there. It was very nice to hear the community, the excitement they had about the passage. So, Leanne, if you would lead us in the invocation, and if y'all would please join me after that in the pledge of allegiance.
Such a moment is this. We all stand at this moment in history, and I just want us to take a moment and just take this in. What it feels like to have the blessing of the community. And so let's begin in the spirit of thanks, spirit of gratitude, spirit of joy, and join me in prayer. We are honored and grateful to serve a community that appreciates the health care JPS has provided for more than 110 years. We are thankful to the Tarrant County Commissioner Court and members of the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee who dedicated long hours to thoughtfully research future healthcare needs in our community. We appreciate the efforts of County Judge Glenn Whitley and County Commissioner Administrator G.K. Manias in educating the community about the needs that will be addressed throughout the successful bond. We're thankful for a board of managers who share a vision of the innovation and change necessary to improve the health of our community. We are grateful for the public trust behind every one of the 1.2 million patient encounters we've had the privilege of experiencing each year. We're thankful for every single person in this room and every single patient and family member in this hospital today, because it is there that our focus lies and our hearts are turned toward. So we thank you, thank you, thank you. And we are reminded that to those who are given much, much is required. Let us use this gift well. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Leanne, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That could be a trap. Steve, he's got something. Sure. During my remarks? Yeah. Great. At the end, okay, great. Thank you very much. Leanne, you actually took my comments away. I couldn't think of a better way to express what you just said. You thanked everyone and what the mission of this hospital is. So again, thank you for what you and your staff do and the employees of this district. I will take just a moment to digress under the CFO report. The CEO report. We're going to pass that because that individual is really out of state for the time being. And then I'd like to talk about my role. I've said this before. I have the privilege of serving this board. I'm just one person amongst the 11, and we truly are a team. And there's been a lot of people before us on boards. As we all know, we're not here to have a history lesson, but we know it's been 33 years since the passage of the bond package for this district. This hospital has still done phenomenal outreach in its mission in this county. It is a unique time. Y'all read the paper. You saw that we passed an $800,000 bond package by about 82%. $800 billion. Thank you. I've been corrected. That's a big number. That's a big number even for a banker. Bankers even have trouble with $800 billion. But Chandler, good point. But again, there is a significance here. It's not just, I guess I get serve as chair, and I appreciate so much that honor. But the truth of the matter is, to this board, to the boards before us, I look at the table and see Trent. I look at the table and see Ralph. I see people who have been working on this for years. So I'm kind of the mouthpiece for the time being to say thank you very much. Lynn, you covered everyone, and whether it's the Blue Ribbon Committee, whether it's the commissioners, whether it's GK, whoever it is. But most important, to the voters of Tarrant County who stepped up and passed it overwhelmingly, the support of this hospital district. So that's kind of what I'm going to say about that. I'm going to move on. But again, I don't want it not to be from heartfelt from this board to the community. We appreciate what they did by stepping up. The other couple of things I will just mention. One is, again, I attended this morning. We have another opportunity to participate in things here at JPS. This coming Monday is Veterans Day. I'm actually out of town. Ralph's kind enough again to step up, and he's going to handle that meeting on Monday, I hope.
I am.
No, and he plays kind of naive. Yeah, he plays. He's done this before. I know T.D. Smyers is from United Way. He's going to speak for us. I appreciate the staff putting that together. Something very important. We appreciate not only the veterans that work for this district, we appreciate the veterans in this community. Ralph's a veteran. I appreciate him doing that, Ralph, so thank you very much. But that's kind of my part of the agenda. I'm used to kind of having this guy sitting next to me, but wait a minute. I think, David, could you help out here a second and see if this all works?
Don't drive.
Yes.
See if we can get him on here.
When I talked to him earlier, I thought he'd be cleaning out a stall, but said, don't be driving when we try to pull this off. David, it's all yours.
Yeah, it worked once. So I hate that the CEO is staring at me and not staring at you right now because we don't have him on the screens quite yet.
You don't have a tie on either.
And I don't have a tie on, and so we're getting there. So hold on a second, Robert. We're having some technical difficulties.
The incentive plan.
Yeah.
Chuck, you want to use this? Wait a minute, Chuck. Chuck, you had a couple comments you'd like to make. Why don't we take this opportunity to do this?
The network held their patient safety and quality fair on Monday. There were 60 presentations that were available to be read, and they picked the finalists, and the whole group did a great job. One of our new people, Dr. Tricia Swift, presented a presentation on positive deviance. I'll let you guys work on that, what that means. But she has a story she can tell you when there's an opportunity. Is he coming up?
Hey, Robert, why don't you try to talk to us now?
David, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Hey, fantastic. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for allowing me to be at the meeting. My guilt got to me, and I called David Mendenhall this morning at 5:30. So for those of you staff members thinking David has it easy, he doesn't. He had to hear me at 5:30 this morning trying to arrange this. I am at the Kentucky Horse Park where Tricia is competing. She competes tomorrow morning. And what's interesting is, Charlie, I am parked. I'm not moving, but I have this positioned on the steering wheel, and it's pointed straight in front of me at a Skiddo can. So everybody that walks into the Skiddo can thinks I'm videoing them. So I'm not, and so I'm waving at everybody to make sure that they realize I'm not doing that. The reason I asked Charlie and David if we could do this is because for those of you listening by live stream, and for those of you in the audience, and certainly you board members, I personally couldn't be more proud. I think our patients have waited 33 years for this. And I think we as a board and we as administration have worked diligently for 8 years to make this happen. And the thing that I am the most proud of, and Charlie, you and the others and the former board chairs need to realize, from Steve to Trent to Ralph and to Scott Fisher and the others, is this issue got passed with an 80% approval in all precincts. So from South Lake to Arlington to Everman on down to Fort Worth, it was powerful. And I think it's a tribute to you board members and those that came before you and those who will come after you. To the administration sitting in the audience, they know how proud I am of them. The work that Bill Whitman and others have put into this has been phenomenal. Everybody on that team put so much into this. So Charlie, thank you. And one thing I do want to let y'all know, I've gotten a lot of emails wanting to know where the new food court is going. It's a little premature to start talking about that kind of stuff. So we've got a plan. We're going to follow a lot of what the dictates or the suggestions from the Blue Ribbon Committee are. So now it's a matter of putting things together. And Trent Petty in the Planning Committee is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting. Trent, I can see you. I see you rolling your eyes. Stop. We are going to do an amazing thing for this community, an amazing thing for our patients. But I wanted to come live to y'all to tell you how proud I am to work with you as a board. You're phenomenal.
Can he hear us? David, leave it on this. Is it still on? Is it off?
Yeah, go ahead and you can talk.
I think Robert's still on. Robert, we thanked everyone else, and I spoke with Robert this morning, and I know he's in Kentucky, and as you know, he told the board last month he'd be gone, and I told him that kind of a Catholic guilt trip because he asked us 3 times he could be gone. But I told Robert this morning I knew he's in Kentucky. He said, well, I'm working out this deal to be there. And I was like, wait a minute, Robert, you don't fly, and you're in Kentucky. How can you be here? But David, thanks to you. Robert, we thanked everyone else. Thanks for the leadership of this organization. We wish we wish Trish great success in her competition, and y'all be safe coming back. And thank you again for what you do for this organization, Robert. Y'all have a safe trip. All right, then we will move along to the next item on the list, and that being the approval of the minutes. They were on the portal and provided previously. If there's any changes or recommended changes, I'd entertain those now. If not, I'd entertain a motion. I have a motion by Mr. Bose, second by Reverend Emerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. We've kind of done the reports, so let's move down to the item number 6 from the medical executive staff, and I will call on Dr. Schrader. Chet?
So at risk of being redundant, I just want, as we've grown as a maturity in medical staff, I just want to say thank you as well to the board, to administration, former, current, past medical staff members, just really for the effort and initiative given to the bond. So thank you, and with that, I don't have any other comments.
Like those kind of reports. Any other questions for Chet? If not, we would move along to the next item, which Dr. Osterberg is coming up to talk about the acclaimed physician group. Mike, it's all yours.
Good, thank you. So a few items. Obviously, Chet and I color coordinated today in particular because you will find on the portal the IES contract is on the portal for further review. From a claim standpoint, we are in the middle of actively recruiting for our open director positions that we have for business development, as well as a director of recruiting. We've got a number of fantastic internal and external candidates for those roles, and we think that whoever joins us in the coming months will definitely add a collective expertise and wisdom to the organization to help us from the claim standpoint and hopefully network-wide as well. In addition, at the last meeting, we discussed the formation of the search committee for the surgery service line chief. That is going full bore with Whit Kiefer. The actual advertisement for that position is in the leadership profile, is up on their website. We have actually changed the title from the acclaim standpoint from surgery service line chief to a senior physician executive. And we're trying this to see if it makes sense and if it works. And part of that reason is because we want this position to be truly reflective of the true scope of work that individual carries. It's really not just a clinical position. It's someone that we expect to have an expertise in quality, in business, in operations, in strategic thinking. And so we're looking for someone who can marry all those responsibilities together. And similar to our director level positions that we have open, we have at least one internal candidate who would be fantastic to fill that role. But we definitely want to see what else is in the marketplace and get a group consensus throughout our entire search committee to make sure that we've got the right candidate in the right time at the right moment for us here at JPS as we continue to grow. The other thing that I really just wanted to add is that we are truly embarking on building a number of interprofessional and multidisciplinary platforms, clinical platforms within Acclaim. Part of that, by example, was to carve out our oncology service line to give it its own breadth and scope within Acclaim. But we are looking at a number of initiatives that cut across our professions as we begin to really break apart traditional silos and look at how patients access care and how we collectively as a physician group can work together to better integrate our services. And so one of the most recent dialogues that we've been having is trying to look at a brand expansion within the physician body of women's health. And so that's not just mother-baby, it's really looking at women's cardiology and women's primary care and women's orthopedic services. I just came from a meeting with our clinical leadership to discuss that, and there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about looking at ways to develop some business planning and strategy around it. So a number of significant initiatives, all really driven around quality of care and integrative platforms and having our physicians and our operations people working in close concert with one another to successfully drive improvements throughout the network.
Any questions for Mike? All right, thank you. Before we get off Acclaim, I think, Chuck, you had a couple comments.
Have asked me what exactly does the executive committee do, and I want to just briefly go over one of our agendas. Robert gives us a district CEO update. Michael gives us an update on the Acclaim, and then we go over and review contracts, and the two we did this past time were emergency rooms, integrative service, which is the emergency room physicians, and pathology. And then Sharon always gives us the financial update, and the new chairman of the board is Jocelyn Z, and she gives us a report from the board of directors of Acclaim, and then Diana gives us the operations update. And I would say as we go through these meetings, Acclaim is starting to mature. And what has become apparent to me is that physicians actually drive a lot of the services that we perform, and that'll be one of the things that philosophically we'll be looking at and evaluating. So that's just my comments for the day.
Super. Thank you, Chuck. Yes, Ralph.
So that's absolutely there. It's not just infant mortality; it's maternal mortality as well. Those are critical indicators for quality and patient safety, and so that is definitely an ongoing dialogue within our women's and infant services, whether it's with our neonatologist or our maternal fetal medicine specialists. But that is definitely high on the agenda list. And I said I tie both infant mortality and maternal mortality together.
Ralph, that's also a primary focus of the quality committee.
Yeah, as I look at our quality on the physician side, and as I look at our key performance indicators and the variety of the PSAs and the outsourced groups that we work with, I'm really trying to drive towards outcomes and not just numbers. And so to ensure that what we do actually has merit and meat and meaning attached to it. And so if it's something that we currently don't already measure. It's also about building those processes and protocols and guidelines that eventually get us to where we need to go to.
Anything else from Mike?
Nope, that's it.
Michael, thank you so very, very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you. Which will bring us now down to item number 8, which is committee reports in action. First being, I'll turn to chair of that committee, Ms. Montgomery, for the financial summary.
Sure. So on October 25th, the Finance Committee met without me, so I'm sure they muddled through it somehow. I'm not sure they
We
could.
stumbled through it.
Stumbled through it. So there are a number of items on the consent agenda that were approved in that committee, and I recommend their approval when we get to them. That's my report.
Super. Thank you very much. Item number B is governance. I'll turn to Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on the 25th after Steve's absence in finance. We persevered through. There are no actionable items as a result of that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Let's bring this to planning, and I heard you got a new job, Trent. Sounds like
It sounds like it.
CEO was looking at your eyes, but anyway,
Thank you, Mr.
update on
Chairman.
planning.
We did meet, and Angie, as usual, took us through all of the updates on the construction report. The one thing I'd like to report to the board on was the report that we received on the new Medical Innovation District that's being contemplated here on the south side. It's a great opportunity for JPS, and I've asked Robert and Scott to make sure that those documents are available for the entire board. It's probably worth taking a look at because I think we can play an integral role in that, and a very exciting time for the district as well as the south side, so thank you.
Anything else for Trent? Yeah, Trent, I agree with you. I was at that presentation. I think you're right. It's going to be phenomenal, and JPS is going to play a major role in that. I don't know if we may have mentioned finance. I know Angie's here. I forget the exact date. We all attended the opening of the Northeast Medical Home. You probably know that date. 11th, so I don't know if we've had a board, but for those in attendance, I know several of the board members were there. I know, Trent, you were out of town, but I know DT and Ralph and Steve, and there were several others. Anyway, appreciate everybody's support. It was a tremendous, obviously, if you haven't seen it, if you're a board member and you haven't seen it, please go see it. It's tremendous. It's not just the building. It's the availability of these services and how we can provide those services that make that the unique building. So, again, to Angie and the staff and the staff that put on the open house, we appreciate that very much. So, yes.
Just want to comment that going out to the Northeast and seeing the new facility, and then you look at the bond passing, individuals, if they visit that facility, can get a vision of what's to come overall throughout the district.
That's right.
Because that's a well-done design facility out there.
Yeah, Ralph, that's an excellent point. Again, for those board members who, I know many of you even went out during the construction phase, but if you haven't seen that facility, it probably is the prototype, as Ralph was saying, that is hopefully be utilized as this board and everyone considers future additional throughout the county. So good point, Ralph. Thank you very much. As far as committee reports, that would now bring us to item number D. Before Mr. Montgomery gives that report, I want to thank Mr. Fisher, Dr. Simmons, along with Steve Montgomery, for serving on that as they were appointed. So again, thank you for that. And Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
You bet. So the nominating committee met today, and I'll share with you our recommendation to the board in a moment, but I want to give a little more context. So over the last dozen or so years, we have a tradition here that I'm blinking.
You're blinking.
Here. Wow, I got stereo now. Oh, a little battery. So over the last dozen or so years, we've had a tradition of 2-year terms. When Irma Johnson Hadley preceded me as chair, she served a couple of years. I served 2 years. I know when Trent was chairman, he served 2 years, and Reverend Emerson served 2 years. We're now at the end of a 2-year cycle with our current board executive committee. And fairness and tradition would dictate that we look to see who is the next slate of candidates would be for that. But something happened this week that's very non-traditional, and that is we passed an $800 billion, this community passed and granted us the authority to do $800 billion worth of improvements to our service delivery capabilities in this community. So we talked about this in our nominating committee, and the idea of adhering to tradition and fairness of the 2-year terms, but also the extraordinary thing that has happened to us this year, this week, and our opportunities that lie ahead. We reviewed the bylaws, and the bylaws state 2-year term and then up to 2 1-year extensions. Up to 4 years is a max. And so with that in mind, and Mr. Simmons overslept, so he wasn't able to make the committee meeting, but Roger and I discussed it of the idea of, all right, well, we're truly in a unique situation now. And our recommendation to this board is that we extend for only 1 year the current slate of officers to carry us through as we're now going to be out selling bonds, and really this is a critical time for us, just for continuity, and that would include Mr. Nguyen and Dr. Weber and Mr. Powell in their current roles. And we're going to recommend to this board to consider a 1-year extension on their current roles.
Is that the recommendation of the nominating committee?
Yes, sir.
I'll check council. I think my position at this, and you've been in this role, is that are there any other nominations from the floor at this time before that recommendation is voted upon? Any discussion? There being none, then based upon, yes, sir.
I have no nominations, but I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with the recommendation. Because when this came for the board 2 years ago, there was disagreement on that. And so I don't understand how we were wanting to extend officers now at the passing of the bond, and we didn't want to extend it as we were getting ready to go into the bond. So I don't understand that analogy. What causes us now to extend officers when the bond has been approved? What is the consistency that we need now that we didn't need 2 years ago?
That's a great question. I mean, we talked about that. I mean, a year ago or 2 years ago was the uncertainty of it, right? The uncertainty of passing the bond, and we didn't know. I mean, frankly, I didn't know until we got really into this election season that we were going to be successful, and I cringed at the thought of not being successful. So, but it's a very valid point. I mean, if we extended you for 1 or 2 years, that would have been a consistency as well, continuity through the process, and that's a valid point. But all I can say is where we're at now is we do have a bond that's been passed, and I think the next 12 months is going to be a make or break for us in terms of the success of that. We have to go out and sell them. We have to do a lot of things, and this board's going to be under enormous pressure, I think, to live up to our ethical requirements, and we're all inundated probably already. Your phones are probably already ringing with folks that want to talk to you about this, and that there's a lot of people in the community, justifiably and rightfully so, that are going to find a lot of business in this, in terms of helping us build some of these facilities. I just see that looking at where we're at now is really an important time for us to be consistent with what we're doing and maintaining that. Now, on the fairness issue, I agree with you. I mean, 2 years ago, we might have done something different. We might have should have done something different, but that's where we are now. So that's our recommendation.
Well, I felt very uncomfortable. I don't think it's fair, and let me voice that, because I still can't receive or perceive the argument of consistency now, what changing officers now or leadership now, how does that disrupt the process? Because the process is going to take place whether it's officers or no officers, selling the bonds, letting contracts, selecting architects, contractors. So I'm not comfortable with it, and especially what was the difference 2 years ago versus now. So I sit here in disapproval of that.
Okay.
I don't like the message that's being sent, and let me just be upfront.
Okay. Yes.
I agree with Ralph on the change, and Chuck is the next in line for the chair, who's been a part of it the whole time. So I'm not sure he's been here, know it all, been a part of it, and so he would be following. So I'm not sure I understand why we need to change the order that we have. I mean, we're going to have make a change anyway later on about what you're doing based on what happened Tuesday.
Right.
So I'm not sure that I agree with that recommendation of keeping it consistent, because we do have consistency. Chuck's been there the whole time, and so he's very familiar with it. So I don't like to see us make those changes, okay, because that means that in the future we're going to make them again. So just wanted to go on record with that.
Sure.
With that discussion, I would still say I believe protocol is such that there is a motion on the floor.
Well, actually, those nominations are on the floor, but you can accept other nominations for any of the individual seats, unless somebody, and if there's no nominations, then you proceed with the report of the committee.
So then, would protocol suggest that if we wanted to continue the progression of forwarding the 2-year terms, that we would have to make a nomination to that end? Or would we have to deny this nomination and then make a new nomination if that nomination were to forward the slate under the 2-year sequence that we've been following?
That's a good question.
If you want to proceed in a different direction than the report of the nominating committee, then you would have to submit a nomination for somebody for any one of the 3 positions, which would open up those positions that have multiple nominations.
So you'd have to do each individual.
Yeah, once there's a nomination for an individual for any one of the 3, then that opens up the nomination for that particular position. If it's only one office, then the other 2 positions go forward with a nominating report, because those nominations are on the floor now.
So just in turn, is it still appropriate to have discussion?
Sure.
You know, when I was part of the group that wanted to get back to 3-year terms, and that was a contentious situation when I became chair, and my statement at the time, like yours, if I watch it long enough, it'll work. Oh, good, 3, like a star. My statement at the time was, the continuity of our board is really assured by the terms that our board members, serve. We don't have a new board member that comes in and becomes chair ever. There's always some level of understanding relative to their progression to those positions. And I wasn't aware that today there was any consideration to anything other than that. Just to be consistent for my own position, I still believe that 2-year terms are good. And I think that moving our leadership of the board into those positions of leadership is absolutely critical. But I also believe it's very important that we have the continuity of the past chairs and of the people that have served to continue being engaged and involved in that process. I think that helps us with that continuity as well. Just because I didn't realize there was going to be any discussion counter to what we've been observing protocol in the past, I guess I'm going to tell you I'm still in favor of the 2-year alternation, rotation like we've had in the past. And that's not to say anything negative about anybody, because I think the group has done a great job. But I think I would be in favor of progressing it the way we've been doing it.
There's another consideration, and maybe we don't want to talk about it publicly, but I'll go ahead and do it. Something else happened on Tuesday night that not only included our bond issue, but also is a shakeup in the Commissioner's Court. And I think that now it's more prudent than ever to just maintain our leadership our current leadership for whatever time that is, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, as this board will begin to have a new makeup, and then, reset at a later date. I think that is, also something else that we really need to consider, and went strongly into my decision-making to just keep the current leadership as it is and see how it sorts out down the road. Because we just don't know how long we have.
That's a good point, Roger. That's a good point. Can I ask, what is the current slate of officers, and what is the slate of officers that would be in place were we to move forward with the 2-year progression as we've been doing it? Typically, the vice chair would become chair.
Right.
That would be Chuck, right?
And then DT would become vice chair.
Would become vice chair.
Then you have to
Then
have
there would
Dorothy.
be then there'd be somebody selected for.
Somebody have to be secretary.
Somebody's secretary.
Yeah, Roger, that's a good point. I mean, you're right, and I certainly understand that, but because the appointee that would become chair is not an appointee of the commissioner that's leaving, I don't know that I have a concern about that. I think it's a great concern. Right. I really do. That's a great point. But given our progression, that may have time to work itself out, whoever the new commissioner is going to be. So I kind of still feel the same way, but I think it's a good point.
You have a committee report on the floor.
We'll keep it right here. So we have a committee report, and then it's open for
any other nominations.
That's correct. So I guess from my standpoint is that either we consider that and/or we go to individual positions. I believe is the way the bylaws state.
Well, you would only go to the individual position if somebody's nominated for one of those 3 positions, independent of the committee report.
Is it appropriate to hear from Chuck and from DT and from Dorothy, the current officers, and get their perspective on this? Because I would be very interested in hearing it. Chuck, especially yours.
I'm very comfortable with Charlie staying as chair for another year. Wait a minute, Mr. Keeley's giving me a sign, you know? No, I'd be very comfortable with Charlie. Staying as chairman of the board, and with me staying as vice chair for 1 year continuation. What is not certain to me is DT, because his county commissioner changed, and I do not know what will happen. It will sadden me if DT leaves the board, to tell you the truth. So I'm comfortable with the committee recommendation.
And we talked about DT as well in the situation with the commissioner. And I agree with you. I feel the same way. I hope he doesn't leave. That's not our decision. That's the decision of the Commissioner's Court. And from a perspective of our committee, we thought we would like to keep him in his current role as an officer.
We all know we serve at the pleasure of the Commissioner Courts.
Right.
And I think all of us, we serve without any party affiliation.
Turn your mic on.
It was mentioned that we serve at the pleasure of the court, and it's our privilege to serve. And I think we all serve without any party affiliation. How we got here. So I have not talked to the new commissioner-elect yet, but obviously I did have some conversation with Andy, and true to how he leads the last 8 years, he asked me personally to see it through, that if there's a change, the transition will take place very smoothly. And this is our community, so we're not going to go away. So,
What's the rule on when this has to happen? Is that a board bylaw?
The bylaws say it has to happen in the 4th quarter of the year.
Well, that'd
which it's got to be this meeting or December meeting, one of the two.
Well, it may not go anywhere, but I'm gonna make a motion that we table the decision to the December meeting. I mean, there's a lot of information, and I didn't walk in here today prepared to even consider this in a different, but there's legitimate points. There's good reasons, and I'd like to know about it. That's just a motion.
I've got a question. Yes. More of a parliamentary question. The recommendation of the committee is in fact a motion, not requiring a second. Is it prudent to vote on that first? And depending on how that goes, table? Maybe.
Yeah. A motion to table takes precedence over a pending motion, but he's got to get a second for his motion to table.
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay. We have a second there. Let's vote on that one to table. I think Trent, that will table it. So have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
No.
Thank you very much.
So
Passes.
it passes?
Well, it was one, wait a minute. I thought we can't.
Do a show of hands.
Tabled in December, right?
Show of hands, I'm sorry, I thought I heard four. Okay, we have a motion and a second, now I'll call for the vote. Those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand.
Table.
The motion
To table.
Motion table.
Correct. 1, 2, 3. It's five. That's what I thought. And those, that's five. Okay. It passes, thank you very much, which will move us along to the next item.
Just comment, I mean, this.
The nominating committee will re-adjourn for a meeting to present to the board in December.
Five. We have 11. It was a 5-vote yes. And what was the vote? No?
I thought we're missing one, two,
It was 5-5.
3, 4.
It's a 5-5. It would be a 5-5 vote.
Yeah, Warren's not here, so there's only 10 of us.
So the vote?
Yes, but it would be 5-4, and if I voted for it, it'd be 5-5.
That's 5, and 11.
No, Warren's not here, so you got 10 votes.
You got 10 people here. Warren's
10
not
here.
here.
You got five for the motion table and 5 opposed to the motion table. So the motion failed.
Chet does not, Chet does not vote.
Yeah, Chet does not have a vote on this particular item.
On this one, therefore, the motion passes, so.
No, the motion fails because it's 5-5 vote.
Right, 5-5 is not a passing.
It does not pass.
Yeah. It's been most interesting.
So the motion that the nominations is still on.
It's still on the table. So therefore, we'll go back. Thanks, Joe. We'll go back to that one.
That one won't pass.
And Roger?
It's still on the table.
It's still on the table. We have to have a vote.
I'm in the service business, and when you get when they tell you to be there, you gotta go. I'm sorry.
Then let's vote on the motion that's on the table. The motion is the recommendation of the nominating committee. And by a show of hands, all those in favor of that, please raise your hand.
This is the motion, that the recommendation of the nominating committee, correct?
Yes, yes.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That would pass. We've got that all legally done.
That motion carries.
Based upon that, that motion passes. And I would thank the nominating committee at this time. And Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, and I thank you that. And I just want to make it clear that I completely respect all the dissenting views here. I completely do, and I understand what you're saying. And so my recommendation was not any malice towards anyone or anyone's capabilities or anyone ascension to a different role. It was just what we discussed. So I just want to make that clear.
And none taken.
Points all well made.
Not all.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So if I understand it, then what has taken place is that the president's slate of officers now will serve another year. Yes. That's what your term.
You correct me, Steve. You're coming from Nottingham. It's a 1 year only as currently in place. I think that was a recommendation that came from the committee. Yes, Ralph.
Okay. All right.
I think the only thing that will be in front of you guys is if and when I'm going to be replaced, then there will be another election.
Then it goes back to nominating. It would go, it's my understanding, and let's get correction on that, DT. I think that's one of the uncertainties.
and I think that was pointed out. We have two people on this board that may, not because of us, who may be replaced. At that particular time, as an officer, it was my understanding, it's not any individual points that, it goes back to a nominating committee.
Correct.
That is correct.
Yeah, and if they're replaced, then you have to be a sitting member of the board to be an officer, so it automatically terminates your position as an officer.
Yes.
What I was going to say is, first of all, I have no negative comments, feelings toward the present sitting officers. I've tried my best as former chair to serve and do whatever asked to do. My issue, again, is the decision to change midstream when you actually have sitting on the board former chairs, and the Commissioners Court extended all of our terms because of the bond. So there would not have been any inconsistencies if we had changed officers and leadership. And my position is, if that was going to take place, and if we were looking at consistency and teamwork, then we would have approved that 2 years ago. And I think that that is a sorry message to send, that we see to do it now, but we didn't see to do it 2 years ago. So yes, I feel a little offended because I made a decision to say, for the sake of unity of this board, that I would not push to extend my own personal term. And I didn't want to demonstrate any selfishness. And I just felt that that recommendation this year, one is a slap in the face and a disrespect to my leadership as chair 2 years ago. And that's why I wanted to say that. I have nothing against Charlie Powell, Chuck Weber, or D.T. Nguyen. But I just wanted to express my heart with that.
Point made, Ralph. Thank you very much. There's no other discussion. This item would move to item number 9. Other matters requiring board discussion. First being the reappointment of Scott Rule. Scott.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I don't want this to be awkward in any way, but I'd like the board to consider approval of reappointment of Scott Rule to the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone, Board of Directors Appointments, Place 4, Arlington, Downtown Entertainment District in Veridian. And despite Mr. Early's absence, I thought it was very important to bring this to the board because any TIF that has entertainment in its name is a TIF I'd like to be a part of.
There being any discussion on this recommendation? If not, I consider a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Brecker, second by Mr. Bowes. All in favor say aye.
Yeah.
Aye. Scott, congratulations, you're still on it. Scott, you may, if you wouldn't mind, also, I know we've discussed this. It's been mentioned by almost everyone, including Robert Early. I know I've been passing your card out for months. Every one of these board members constantly gets questions. You might just, again, give us a kind of a snapshot, because we need to actually approval of our protocol. We've discussed it. I think it's the formality of it.
Sure, absolutely. And I think what you'll find is this protocol is consistent with a lot of the comments that were made earlier by several of you, that we really want to handle business here at the district with transparency and accountability and make sure that our vendors and our community has the most recent and up-to-date information on what's going on. So for that reason, we think it's important to update, revise, and really put more structure around our protocol as people become more and more interested in what might be happening at JPS. You see the protocol in front of you, and it'll be posted on the board portal, of course, as well. It really provides for a central point of contact for the district for potential construction inquiries, and that would be me. It really provides the Office of Diversity direction in establishing quarterly, at least quarterly meetings for our vendors and stakeholders in the communities, provides education and notice of those meetings to our agencies and chambers across the community, and that will track the attendance and questions that come out of those meetings so that we can share that information with stakeholders in our community.
Thanks, Scott. I know this has been discussed previously. Is there any questions regarding this? Yes, Dorothy.
I know that all the inquiries and everything is going to be going to you, Scott, but for some of the programs, will you have some help on that?
Absolutely. And you know what a great team I've got behind me with Angie Morgan, her staff in the diversity office. And that's a really good point, Ms. DeBose, because there's very much a difference between some inquiries we get that are about the proposed construction projects as presented in the bond. And, you know, my first question to those vendors when they contact me is, are you interested in doing business with JPS, or are you interested in doing one of the bond construction projects? Because we have great things going on all the time here at JPS, and what we really want to do is engage vendors that can help JPS become better. And if that's the case, then, you know, I put them in contact with the diversity office or you know, our construction staff, as the case may be.
Well, let me just say it another way. We have a small diversity office, and I know they do a good job, but there's only 3 people over there. So when you're talking about a project this large and on just tracking that, that's a major problem. That's a major, not a problem, but that is something that I'm very concerned about. Usually when they have the school had theirs, when they built the big deal in Arlington, on diversity, they had a separate program that tracked that to make sure that all of our commitments and goals were met. So
sure.
I'm just saying that if diversity is taking that on with 3 people.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to be very clear. Thanks for that question and asking for that clarification, because this is really about right now providing information and kind of, you know, filtering those inquiries that we get. You know, I would be very confident that at such time as that a construction project is ripe and we're proceeding with a construction project, we'll have alternate resources available that can help everyone from the diversity office to the construction office.
All right, okay.
And I think your point's well made, Dorothy.
I echo what Dorothy said. I mean, if you need resources, you know, I hope you know you have the support of the board to do that, because we want to get it 100 out of 100 right on this.
Absolutely.
So please let us know.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was reluctant to bring it up for discussion, but I was going to ask it because you would think that Trent's job increases because we going through planning committee for this whole process. But I was wondering, at some point, we probably need to develop, I don't want to say to-do list, but a process sheet on where things go, you know, from architect to contractors, that the board needs that info to understand how we get to where we get to. Does the county let out the contracts, or do we set the bids, and all of that's entailed in that, I think. And so that goes back to Dorothy's question, because when you get to that point, you really need that diversity group to track those areas.
Yeah, Ralph, I agree, and I think from just referencing what Robert said, my assumption is that within planning, we're going to have board members reviewing not just the contracts, but the recommendations for professional services.
Yes.
And that within the context of that, we as board members need to make certain that diversity issues are being addressed, and that we've you know, dedicated correct resources to that end. And I think if we as a board get a feeling that we're not, kind of to Steve's point, I think we're going to have to stop. Right. And we're going to have to go add resources to it. But I don't want the committee to be involved at a level that's inappropriate relative to just having to take 1,000 phone calls. Yeah. Right. But there will be a point, I think, where there's an appropriate time for us to be able to, you know, have information from the board and circulating back through the process. And that's typically how we've done it, right, Mr. Chairman, in the past. So I'm assuming we're going to observe that.
I think that's exactly right, Trent. Thank you. Yes, DT.
I have a comment, because I think we talked about this about a year ago, but it was too early when we still going through the bond election and all that stuff. what I'm concerned about is that, you know, how do we impact the community for years to come? And do we have any budget within a diversity group to go out to the community and train and have programs for training for those skill sets so that they will benefit for years to come, because building and maintaining and all that stuff down the road? Or do we just pay some group and then they go out and source jobs somewhere else and then have our community? You know, those can go back to our community, and I think $1 million here, $1 million there to support, to give them the skill set, could pay dividend down the long run for us. So that's, I think we need to pay more attention
building
to
capacity, right, in our own community. To
technical IT, to construction, to maintenance, to all that stuff down the road that we can uplift the community as we serve. So I just don't want just to see diversity now. I want to see 5, 10 years from now benefit from that, what they build.
Okay, thank you.
What we're saying is, sounds like we need beefing up. Nothing wrong with what we have.
Sure.
We've now passed a bond package. There's a lot of work to be done. We're not going to spend all that money next week, but we need to get in place, like DT said, with diversity, whatever it is. As Trent indicated, we need to staff up. I think this board is saying, make sure we have the people that are available ourselves to go out and do these type things. Okay. Yes,
Mr. Chair, I need to point out, I don't know if Angie's still here or not.
She is.
She is. She's right there.
Okay. But to give some kudos to Angie and her office, she does work now reaching out to contractors to emphasize to do work for JPS, to get that experience for hospital work. And so she does a outstanding job on the diversity side to try to recruit contractors in and, you know, so they can get that experience here at JPS. So that is happening. I mean, it is taking place.
So we don't need to give them any more staff.
No.
Equally staffed.
Yeah,
Scott, so I think that's what we're saying.
Thank you. We understand, once again, this is for our immediate need of educating the community and stakeholders, and we look forward to working closely with the Planning Committee and the Diversity Office to beef up and to expand the process.
Good. I think there's any other discussion. If not, I would entertain a motion. We do need to actually officially approve the protocol policy.
So moved.
By Dr. Wepper, second by Mr. Montgomery. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Scott, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
We've been talking about diversity, so I think it brings us to item number C. As Mr. Bose knows, she had a presentation in the HR committee I guess about a month ago, and it's such a good report. We feel like the entire board needed to handle it. Michelle, I'd ask you to come on up, and it's going to be part of this, but whatever I'm saying is thank you very much, and I think it's a great idea, Dorothy, to have this report to the entire board.
Some of the questions they're asking.
That's what I'm saying is I think the timing is just perfect. So thank you for your recommendation. Michelle, it's all yours.
Good afternoon. I'm so excited to hear all the discussion about diversity and inclusion. So our whole team is here today, and they're smiling in the back of the room. So we are excited to do a quick update today. We wanted to update the board on what we've been doing in the areas of diversity and inclusion. And we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about kind of our overall mission, what we're doing now, some of the wins, not only from a supplier diversity, which I know we're talking about now, but what we're doing with employee and engagement and diversity with our individuals in the workplace, and then what we're doing with our patients. So we're excited to give a quick update today and to talk to you about our strategy for moving forward. So you'll see, if you look on the screen, there, you'll see our agenda. I want to talk to you a little bit about the summit. We had a summit several years ago, and many people ask what's happened since the summit. So we are going to show you the results of the summit, where we've taken that information and how we've used that in the areas that you see listed. Education, we'll talk about employee and patient experience, our community engagement, and obviously the supplier diversity program, which you guys have already started to discuss today, and then moving forward. There's a lot of information, but what we really want to focus on is the heart of the issue. And we have a graphic that you see before you, and it has diversity and inclusion at the center. We have placed diversity and inclusion in the center of a lot of things that we do here at JPS because we believe it's in the heart, it is the heart of what we do. When I say that, I mean everything we do with our employees and patients, we want to be inclusive, we want to be respectful, we want to be culturally competent with our patients. We want to make sure that we're good community partners. So it's a kind of the heart, the center of things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and we try to touch all of those. The job of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is to support and engage workforce and to help sustain it. In addition to that, we support a respectful and culturally competent approach to healthcare, which simply means that we have patients from many different walks of life and different cultures, and we want to make sure that we're hitting those specific needs. We want to deal with issues of health disparity and health equity and making sure that each patient that walks through that door receives appropriate care. And finally, the third thing that we exist for is we really want to support the use of historically underutilized businesses. And we believe that that really helps us with innovation and creativity and competition, and it supports the overall health of this county. And so those are the three areas that we focus on. And as we mentioned, we have 3 people on our team. We're small, but we like to say small but mighty. So we're tackling those 3 areas, and we have great partners internally, and we'll talk about some of those today. Okay? So with that, what have we been doing with education? I just want to give...
Will you go back on screen? I'm not sure it's appropriate to talk about it here or not, but I would prefer to see healthcare equity and equality, because you give people opportunity, but it needs to be fairness also as well.
Yeah.
I want to see if we can modify that health equity to health equity and equality, because there's 2 different things. One is the opportunity, and the other one is the fairness. That needs to go with it also.
Very good. Yes, I agree. We can update that to make sure we put equity and equality. Thank you. Okay, what have we been doing to get there? We talked a little bit about, let's take the employee base first. We talk about education and employees, our vendors, and our community. We have been working with educating the workforce for several years. We started in 2014 with just answering questions. When individuals would have a need for cross-cultural communication or teamwork for a diverse team, they would come to us, we would respond and go out and teach. In addition to that, we continue to move. FY 15 and 16, you'll see those numbers increase. There's an increase because we started training in a more formalized way. And what I mean by formalized is we have new team member orientation, and we send a clear message from the time a person starts working here at JPS that this is a respectful environment and that they are included and that their skills and abilities and what each individual brings is important. So we now have diversity and inclusion education and new team member orientation, as well as our leadership acceleration programs and other formalized programs. I'm real excited, though, about what you see in FY18. You'll see a little different there where you see the 3 colors. In the green, it represents everything that we've been doing, responding to requests, making sure that we're educating staff and the leaders and how to work effectively with many different cultures. But also the area in blue represents our vendor education. And this is real significant now as we talk about our relationship in the community and making sure we're available. We started several months ago training vendors on how to do business with JPS. And that education is a quick education of how do you sign up, how do you get involved in our portal, so we would know who the vendors are, and they would know how to work with us. So we started that several months ago. It has been well received. We've been out to the chambers as well as internally. We've held sessions, and we really have had a good opportunity to train and have vendors work together. And then finally, the area in yellow you see is community. We get involved in the community. One of the things we did recently was with Fort Worth ISD, where we actually got involved in the project for 7th and 8th graders, and we had several different departments at JPS who were involved. And we went out to make sure we spoke with 7th and 8th graders about careers in healthcare and how to work in this environment and what they might need to do to work in this environment. And so that's a little bit about what we've been doing with education. The reason I spent a little time there, the next couple slides, I'm going to show you results quickly. We believe education is a driver. The education of working together and creating an environment that's respectful and making sure all our patients are taken care of is really key. So education has been a part of that process. We will continue that in FY19. Really excited because we have an executive committee, which is executive VPs who have helped us to target FY19, and the target is really focused on what do we need to do from education standpoint, and what do we need to do from a patient experience and coordination of care standpoint. We are going to be training anyone who has direct patient contact. And so that means when someone calls us, how respectful are we at that point? Do we make sure if there are any special needs of that patient, if there's a language issue, whatever that issue is, that we're receiving those the right way? When people come to our doors and they come in and there's a need for translation or communication or interpreters, then we make sure they have that. And then once they're here, obviously we take care of them. And then the discharge phase is so key as well. We are focused on things like making sure our homeless population is treated the appropriate way at discharge. That might be different from someone who is not homeless. So we're looking at those types of things. Specifically, how do we support? Our role is to support our providers, physicians, and nurses who have contact to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all cultures that we serve and care for. And so we're really excited about that. In addition to that, we're working in partnership with Laura Burnside and Patient Experience and that team, Annika Fisher, on patient registration. They're actually involved in looking at the coordination pieces. We're doing the education pieces together. So big plans for FY19 to make sure we continue to improve our patient outcomes and making sure that we do that with all patients.
But before you move from that.
Yes.
Are you doing it? I was at the HR meeting when you presented. I just don't remember. Are we doing anything in the area of the physicians themselves?
Yeah, the training that I mentioned for FY19, the plan is improving patient outcomes. Physicians are part of that process and that plan as well. And so we, physicians and residents, so we met with Dr. Tricia Elliott.
Right.
There is a plan, right now we're in the phase of looking at the curriculums, looking at what is the best way to educate the different groups. Also behavioral health is a part of that as well.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge a claim to be part of that as well.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
So just a couple more things I want to highlight. Employee engagement, we have seen consistently, this is really good news, increase in our employee engagement scores. We measure employee engagement overall, but we have two specific diversity indicators that you see there, questions that we ask about our environment and our culture here at JPS. And the last question I want to focus on, JPS really does create an environment that is conducive for diversity and inclusion and respectful of all backgrounds. And you can see consistently for the last 3 years, we have increased in those scores. And we feel really good about that because the scores around diversity engagement are actually higher than scores around engagement in general. And so we are doing a really good job. And we believe that education is a real driver. That message that we send the first day people work here, that they're respected and valued, I think is the key. And so we want to create that environment and make sure all employees are engaged. Okay, and also if you, on the right, the national averages are there for the last question. We not only exceed the numbers for engagement for employees, but we exceed the national averages as well. Okay, what are we doing with business and supplier diversity? Again, great news. We're seeing more support for this area as well. And as you can see listed there, that we have seen an increase in our percent spend for the last 3 years consecutively. We believe, again, the fact that we have vendor outreach sessions where we're training vendors, we're reaching out we have really focused on a business diversity committee. So I get to be the vehicle today, but what I want you to know is that many people in this room, including IT, including finance, we have contracts department, Scott Rule has worked with us, the executive team, Pia Walker, who leadership also, who has been involved in helping us to make sure we coordinate and communicate. The real difference here is that we're talking, we have systems that talk, we work closely with making sure that we have people not only enrolled in our program, but that we track appropriately and we know where that percent spend is. So a lot of support from internal and a lot of collaboration, and that's a real victory.
Yeah, can you clarify what the tier one and tier 2?
Yes, tier 1 is a percent spend for when it's the prime contractor. So that's the main contractor, the prime. The tier 2 is for subcontractors. So you could have a large organization with a contract, and then they have subcontractors who are small business, and so that's where the tier 2 comes in.
There's a reason why we don't have tier 2 for 2018.
Very good. Tier 2, we will have that once we get our audited financials for 2018. And I will say this, what's really exciting about that is that we're able to report now almost real time for everything else. In the past, it was wait to the end of the year and let's go recalculate. A lot of hard work from people in this room to make sure that we can bring you that information faster. But we are improving every year, and there's a lot of support and teamwork in this area.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
In terms of tier 2, do you have a way to track for those that we did not make the cut when they went for bidding process? Because what I'm concerned is that it could be the price is a little bit higher when they bid, but there's a reason why, because they're small, they don't have economy of scale, they can't attract good people unless they pay a little bit more. But if we really truly want to help the community, I just don't want pricing is the only way. We have a little wiggle room. How much percentage can we go over to get the right group, to attract the right number of skill set that they may be paying a little bit more to get those. So.
Okay. The question was, do we have a way of tracking why someone might not get the bid or someone who is not awarded a contract? And do we have issues?
Tracking may not be the right word I want to use, but at least know and aware so that we can revisit it year after year to see how do we really want to help the community.
How do we help the vendor who may have a larger price, you're saying, because they're small?
Sometimes they're small. In order for them to attract good people, they may have to pay a little bit more because they don't have stock option capability like a big corporation. And they trade that off by paying high bonuses. And they may not be able to get down to the economy of scale in order to bid fairly.
Right. One of the things that helps with that is that there are several factors. Price is not the only factor that is used, and that's, of course, purchasing involved, but there are several indicators that they look at to determine if that vendor, and diversity is considered in that factor. So that is one of the things.
Is there any way we can track to see where are they now and where are they 5 years from now? Because they're part of the program, and if they grow out that program, we should be proud that these are the people that we help in the early days that they get to the other side.
Very good. Is there any way to track where people are now and where they're going to be 5 years from now if they start with us and go through the program? We haven't been doing that, but there is obviously a way to continue to look at. Our system is B2G Now, which is a system that tracks the vendor portal. We know when they register. We know if they have contracts, so we do have that system that can help us do that. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Can I ask you a question about this? Because I agree, you guys are doing a great job. And I like how you're dividing out now so we can really divide out our group and our effort in a more specific way. What's your opinion about our goal?
About what?
Our goal? I mean, 25% is our goal. Is that reasonable? Is it attainable?
Is it comparable to other?
Okay. Great question. Thought that was going to be so easy. I do. No, I'm good. I'm good. I do have an opinion about that.
I hope you do.
Our goal. It's interesting. In certain areas, it is very obtainable, and I will go back to what Reverend Emerson mentioned earlier, Angie Morgan in construction. We reached that goal consistently and far surpassed that goal in construction because it's conducive with a lot of the things that she does. Some other areas are really difficult because you don't have a lot of small businesses who compete in that area. Yeah. And that's why it is a goal, but with an understanding that there are going to be times where you can reach that, and there are times when you can't, but it's still a striving point. Is it consistent with what's going on with other areas? We do look at that, and what we've seen within this region of anywhere from 20 to 25% we've seen pretty consistently. We're open, obviously, to looking at what is reasonable or not, but right now we have just been striving to move to that point. And again, we get a lot of help from construction, but then some other areas are more difficult. And we are realistic. One of the things that is helping us is we're not trying to force something that's not there. If it is not there, we understand that. But if there's an opportunity and we need to reach a little further or look a little longer to make sure we get the right individuals to do the work, then we want to do that.
I don't want to complicate your life at all.
You're not. We're good.
Does it make any sense to categorize certain kinds of work and set goals particular to the category instead of saying across the board?
Everything else is pretty much the same except construction. We have construction separate right now, and that's a whole nother, as we know, area that we focus on. But we do look at the total amount. The numbers that you see there do include our construction, but we do know that we meet that percentage, the 25% goal in construction.
I think you just answered the question when I raised to Scott earlier about getting involved for better skill set training and all that stuff. Is that can we take those that can only use limited skill set for construction and get them into IT, get them into big book nursing, do other stuff so that they can work in their community. And it requires additional work to work with our community, a technical school type thing to attract also. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but sometimes they need some help.
Yes.
In training. They can work for us 3-5 years after graduation so that they, because I think
the vendor education session so we can have the understanding. Obviously, there's more, as you mentioned, that individuals might need more mentoring and coaching. The way we handle that is we give them resources. There are other areas they can go to, like SCORE, and areas where they can get mentoring. So we have a list of where you might go if you need additional help that we wouldn't offer. We know our scope is limited to making sure that they know information about JPS and doing business, but we are concerned about overall making sure people have the information they need.
Because for me, construction is short-lived. Then when it's done, there's not much job afterward.
Yes.
And the other ones, you uplift the community to a different skill set.
Yes.
Okay. I think, Steve, you were looking at, breaking that out, showing construction, and then look at the other areas, and then we can do a total. We can come back with that because they have it that way already.
Oh, they do.
Because on construction, you probably will be ahead of the 25%, but in other areas, and we might need to look at those and say, they're not going to ever get to be 25.
Right.
We might have to set something different. So it's something. We just give it to her. She'll bring it back.
She'll figure it out.
We'll get it.
Well, I mean, the reason I think it's important is because everyone is measured on their performance metrics when we look at their advancement and their salaries and everything else. And I don't want to have a group that's got a goal that's not achievable, or that a portion of it is only achievable without really being realistic and adjusting that, because then that makes Michelle's group look bad, and they're doing everything they can to meet it. So it's just, I think it makes sense to break it out and show it that way.
Yeah, we will do that.
Because, I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
Because one of the things I think you have to look at is the size of the company that's providing the product. Yeah. And there are times when it's a small company, they can't compete at the level of a major, okay? So they might get whacked out, and that larger company can reduce their price there, and I think that it's a key that we do look at how we do that.
We will. Thank you. Okay, just kind of wrap up a lot of information, but I just wanted to tell you that we had. I'm sorry, Charlie. A couple things. Wins for 2017, 2018. We believe the streamlined process that we just talked about, working with all the different departments that we mentioned, is really working for us. We're seeing improved employee engagement. So we look at diversity, we're looking at this big picture. I know we often focus on supplier diversity, but the bigger picture is that employees are feeling valued and respected. We're looking at our training programs and what we've been able to accomplish in just a few years, over 4,000 trained. We're looking at some awards that we received in the community, and we're well respected for the work that we're doing, like the Minority Business Council Honorary Award. And then we've also worked internally with the lecture series and created a session on preparing for the future workforce as it is more diverse, and helping our leaders with that. And obviously vendors in the supply chain process and training more in that area. Tier 1 and Tier 2 spend, it's also helping us to be able to calculate that and know how primes are working with subcontractors. We didn't have that in the past, so we are now set so we can look a lot at those subcontractors. So we are really excited with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and we are moving forward. And we want to thank you for your support. We feel the support from the board, from the executive team, and all that you do to help us do the work that we do. So we're going forward. Our strategy is real simple. We're going to continue to drive and look at the spend. We're going to work on our patient outcomes. We're going to work on our contact with all patients and making sure that we're giving culturally competent care. We're going to continue to increase the pipeline of vendors who register with us, small or large. We believe that the greater the pool, the more value we'll have and opportunities there, and we'll partner. We'll be a good community partner with our chambers and other organizations who will do what we do. And finally, we're working on best practices, evidence-based ways to do this. We're currently looking at several different national benchmarks to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. So some of the answers to the questions that we have, they've already been resolved, so we'll continue to do that. So that's an update for today. I just want to thank you again. Yes, Robert.
Hope this comes out okay. I would hope that at some point that we could do some type of diversity retraining with the board. Maybe at a board meeting. One of my hopes and desires is that individuals does not look at me as the person who's going to raise those questions and issues at every board meeting, but the entire board is sensitive to that. Or Ralph, are you okay with that? No, is the board okay with that? And so I would ask if we would consider it somewhere that maybe the training that diversity office gives to the employees, that maybe some of that could be done with the board.
Good point. Good point. Well, we'd certainly take that into consideration. Just like I think Dorothy's idea was great to have Michelle and give this report. For those in the HR, we saw it. And I think, Ralph, you know that it's not a major focus of the board, but any additional training in the diversity and implementation of where we're going now that the bond package is passed, I think the timing is critical. So I certainly agree with you 100%.
I think we need to go a little bit beyond just diversity and inclusion. I really believe we need to be on the forefront of cognitive diversity. Like I said before, it has to be based on background, experience, and perspective so that we can cover everything, not just the color of your skin. Right. Different generation gaps, different culture, different religion, all that stuff plays into that background, perspective, and experience. And I think the more we can go forward, I think it will help look at not just the color of our skin. I think that will work. Mm-hmm.
Good point, DT. Michelle, your team's doing a great job now, but looks like we got a whole lot more going forward.
Yes,
so
and we're
continue to
ready,
work.
so we are here to support in any way we can.
Super.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing. Thank you
so
very
much.
much. Ralph Boyd.
Date back that you want to do the training to the board.
Which brings us now to item number 10, which is the consent agenda. There's numerous items on there. They've been on the portal. If there's anything that needs to be pulled off, we would do it or discuss it. If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Have a motion by Mr. Nguyen, a second by Mr. Bose. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 11, legal counsel comments. Anything from the legal other than?
Yeah, we had report from finance. There were 34 contracts that were under $500,000, and that list has been posted on your web portal.
Is that all? General counsel? Which will bring us to item number 12, which is executive session. I don't think this would be very long. We need to deal with our privileges and those things, Chet, but we're going to take 5 minutes before we come back. Let's take 5 minutes break. We'll come back in and do close. Thank you. Thank y'all very much. We will now reconvene in open session to, for the purpose of privileges, and I'll call on Dr. Schrader.
Yes, so for consideration of the from consideration of medical executive committee to the board, we have a list of privileges we'd like to request approval.
Make a motion, we approve.
Have a motion, have a second by Mr. Bose. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Is there any other business to come before the board? There being none, we adjourn. Thank y'all very much.